If you like what you're seeing and hearing, please consider subscribing to the podcast. You can go to either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, or Amazon Music in the podcast section. It'll hit Monday morning or Sunday afternoon, depending on when it posts. And the video will hit on YouTube and Spotify Monday. Spotify will hit Monday evening, and YouTube it'll hit Monday morning, 7 a.m., just like it does for the audio services. So please go to those places and consider subscribing or listening to the show. You can also write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com if you want to write me a letter. Let me know what you think of the show, things like that. Or you can also find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So go to those places and please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks. And with that, we'll get on to the episode. Hello, my name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 244 of Gaming with Grief. And this episode is all about tropes. Because here's the deal. One, I've had the flu. I've been sick. I've literally been in bed most of last week, or the week before last. Anyway, time is a flat circle. I've been in bed for several days, doctor's orders. And I was playing a game for review, and I ran into a trope that I've run into a lot of times when it comes to movies, TV, games, that kind of stuff. And it just kept coming up, a trope about death. So I started looking into tropes. To be honest, the game I'm reviewing is a very long game, and because I lost time because I was asleep and in bed, and then when I got up and wasn't in bed anymore, I had to go to work and work overtime. So this is just a combination of things. But because this trope kept coming up, it kept bothering me. It bothered me so much. Like any fiction, there's tropes in fiction. Whether it be video games, movies, TV, all that kind of stuff. But this one just kept coming up, like I said. And so I had to do some research. I went to tvtropes.org, which I've been to before, and I've used for information for other episodes and like kind of insight. I do like that when they have a topic like TV tropes, and like this, I typed in grief. You can actually click on the hyperlink, and they have an expanded explanation for where they're coming from. Because basically, right now, what I'm looking at is like a one-line description. Like I'm just gonna do the first one just to give you an example. So they do it in alphabetical order, and the first one they come up with is accidental child killer backstory. A character who unintentionally caused a child's death in the past carries the burden into the present. Yeah, that's a trope in TV, you know? Some of these I noticed they're tropes, so I don't think they're making like a moral judgment on them. One of them just said, I'm trying to see if I can find, grief-induced split. A couple breaks up after a tragedy, usually a death, probably the death of a baby or something. You know, I've heard of that actually in real life. Maybe a couple had a miscarriage and the pain they broke up. That's not a moral judgment on them or the trope. The people at tvtropes.org, there's no name on this. I looked, I don't know who writes these or how they're compiled. If this is AI, I have no idea. But basically, they just kind of went through the tropes. And I wrote down the ones that I was trying to find that kept coming up. And some of them I thought were really good. They have one called the 5 Stages of Grief, which I thought was pretty good. 5 Stages of Grief. Sad characters always go through these 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. That is true. I've been through it. I've been to therapy. I've been through those things, but I don't think anything's linear. I know I've seen some shows and even some games where somebody just embodies one of these emotions through the entirety of the series. And I think a lot of people said, I've heard a lot of smart people online and even therapists say, it's not a linear line. It doesn't go from point A to point B. You go back and forth between these things, the accepting, the bargaining, all that. Again, I've said it many times, but I'll say it again. The number one thing I found for myself that's true about grief is the waves. It comes in waves. The idea that you could be fine 1 minute and then, the next minute you miss the people that are gone in your life that are dead, where you're like, man, like sometimes I'll just be driving home and be like, man, I just want to call my mom. She's not around. Can't do that. It's that kind of stuff. I think that's the most true, which they don't really bring up. They have another one here, Grief Song, a musical piece about someone mourning the death of a loved one. You'll usually see this in like a movie or something when someone, at the memorial, the wake, somebody will turn on, John's favorite song or Jill's favorite song, and everybody will sit there and get sad and stuff like that. Um, I like the name of this one. I let Gwen Stacy die. A hero blames himself for not being able to prevent the loved one's death. To be honest, there's a lot of stuff about with that one that I don't really like. I mean, you know, Gwen was in that situation anyway. There's a lot of these, but one thing that I didn't see on here that I want, well, I'll just go. There was a couple that I thought were like honorable mentions. One is the memorial for the antagonist. Um, so it's like offering a funeral service for the deceased villain out of respect, honor, despite their atrocities. I've kind of done this in real life. To be honest, I didn't have a very good relationship with my paternal grandmother, my dad's mother, and uh, even though I didn't have a good relationship with her, I thought people were pretty disrespectful to her at the funeral. Somebody was chewing gum during the memorial. That's pretty sad and dark. And I went outside because after the memorial, they're actually gonna bury her. She was in a coffin, and nobody stayed. Nobody from the family stayed. Now, I didn't have the best relationship with her, but I still feel that people could have stayed. So I went outside while she was being buried, and a few of my other family's members on the other side of the family, and my mom's side of the family, who knew her obviously, came over and watched her get buried as well, and I just thanked them. It's a big deal. Um, you know, uh, just because I have a bad relationship with somebody doesn't mean. I think now, especially I'm a little bit older, like just respect them enough to like be there when they're put in the ground. I mean, to me, that just seems like a basic thing of respect. So that actually happened to me in real life. So again, I don't think tvtropes.org is like making a moral judgment. They're just writing down all the tropes. Uh, uh, and then the other one I have is Burn Baby Burn. This is the one where it's basically a character burns something with negative associations. Usually it's like the cool guy don't look at explosion things, where somebody will burn a house or burn photos, but they won't look at it. Well, they burn a house down, they walk away, they start a bonfire or something, or burn their ex's stuff, they walk away. That's one that always comes up. But through all this, unless I missed one, I tried to look through this very carefully. I mean, it just goes from A to Z. The one, uh, the one that I never saw, right here, moving beyond bereavement. This is kind of it. A character arc in which a death of a loved one must eventually be accepted. Um, yeah, that's true. Needs to be accepted. I think what I don't like, and this trope is going to come up in the game I'm going to review in a few weeks, and the game I'm going to review, I don't want to ruin it yet, but it's very long. I have a day job, and plus, I'm really debating on doing like more of a long form review where I go kind of chapter bit by chapter bit. So I'm kind of like debating internally whether to do that because I like reviews, I like spoiler casts, but hey, I have a little bit more time than these other podcasts I listen to where they have like a production team and have to like move on. It's just me. But I think this one trope that I've been running into, which again we'll talk about soon with the game that I'm reviewing, it's the move on trope, Hey, it's been a week, you're sad. Hey, it's been a month, you're sad. You know what? Get back on that saddle. Get back into it. What are you doing sad? Why are you so sad? It's only your mother, your brother, your husband, your wife, your whatever. Someone in your life died. Get over it. Get up. Stop being so morose. Now, listen, I've talked about on the show and I've done it in different episodes about uh, prolonged grief, what perpetual grief is. There's been studies about that. You can check those episodes out in the comments. Uh, well, anyway, I've done those episodes before, and there is a thing of like, what is too much? There's some people in my life that I follow on the socials that are very much, I don't know. I don't know if I want to. I don't really want to make a judgment on them. It just feels like they're kind of stuck in their grief. But anyway, I guess you can be more argument than I am. I'm trying to do something positive. Anyway, I think the only problem I have with the move on thing is the time. Uh, I could see, I guess, making an argument for, hey, it's been 7 years. You need to go to therapy to deal with this because I think the one thing therapy taught me, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again because, I know my subscriber count. I know a lot of people are listening to this, which is great on podcast services, but I think the thing is, you you basically have to learn how your brain is working after grief, and therapy helped me with that. It's like, this is what you're experiencing. It's fine, other people have experienced it, but here's the tools you need to deal with what's happening in your brain when you get these feelings come up. And that was great. It like just rewires your brain, right? Well, the thing is, I think the problem with the trope that I'm talking about is the time where it's like been a week or 3 days or 2 months, and people are like, "Hey, could you just stop being sad?" And I think I was talking to my wife about this when I was planning the show, and I think what it is your uh, rightful feelings of grief right in the aftermath of somebody dying. Whether it be a week or a month or whatever, you may decide to go to therapy, but you just like, maybe you're trying to find a therapist, and maybe you try a therapist again. It's like a car. Like, when you go to the car dealership, very few times do you go, that's the car I want. My wife and I had a bad experience with a therapist, which doesn't mean the therapist was bad. It just wasn't really giving us what we thought we needed. We found another therapist. They were great. Hopefully that first therapist is good with other people. Probably people found her and was like, this is great. Um, but the idea is, maybe we're trying to find a therapist, this isn't really working out, and you're still really just like, you're obviously depressed because someone in your life died. And this idea that people come up to you and say, why, just stop, just, move on. I think I was talking to my wife, and I think it's because those feelings make those other people feel uncomfortable. It's not so much about you stopping grieving, they just don't want to see you feel sad because that makes them sad. And I've done the thing where I've been a dick before, where people have asked me about my kids. Why don't you have kids? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I usually try to be very general and not get into it. But it is weird how rude that question is. Like, do you have kids? No. Why? Like, there's so many personal decisions why people do or don't have kids. And it's usually at the third question mark that I will just be rude because I think they're being rude. Where I've had someone ask me, do you have kids? No. Why? Well, my wife and I, just to be general, it didn't work out. What does that mean? Is usually, which I've had happen, I think, 2 or 3 times. Then I'm rude and I'm like, listen, one of them died. And the other ones, it was a miscarriage. So they died as well. We just gave up, and someone's like, somebody I said that to the last time said, Jesus Christ, that's crazy. Or why'd you say that or something? And I was like, well, that's what happened. And you kept asking, and it is a rude thing. I've seen some responses online when people ask that. I'm a big Reddit reader. Uh, anyway, for me, that is what happens when, um, it to me, it's the time of that trope of stop. And I really think that's what it is. That feeling of you being sad and people seeing you sad makes people feel uncomfortable and they don't know what to do, so they tell you to just stop. It's the same reason why we don't really talk about death a lot. It's weird. To be perfectly honest, my wife has some photos of our kids, whether they be ultrasounds or whatever, and I still have a hard time looking at them. And she brings this up. She'll look at them. I still have a hard time looking at them, but I don't want to stop her from looking at them. Anyway, um, so yeah, that trope, it kind of bothers me. It seems to be coming up more and more. I don't know if it's a thing in fiction where it expedites the story, but it just seems like a weird thing where you don't have to do it. I bring up Gotham Knights a lot, but that happened in Gotham Knights where you see a hologram of Batman when he's training you, and he says, "Let go of your grief." I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? He became Batman because his parents died, and he goes to Crime Alley. It's like, why don't you let go of your grief, you idiot, you big ninjutsu idiot? Anyway, it's like, you're not. Why are you judging me? Yeah. What if he did go to therapy? Would there even be a Batman? I guess that's my answer for everything. I guess just go to therapy. Yeah, I think that's it this week. Everybody have a good week out there. Be safe. I know in certain parts of the country I'm in America, it's very cold. Well, it's cold in a lot of places. Be careful. Be safe. If you have to travel, travel safe. Safety first. Have a good week. I will talk to everybody next week, and goodbye.